Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to set up a spin control if you want to animate a pistol or revolver spinning around a finger. It's pretty straightforward. Right now in my scene I have the gun control, and I also have my wrist control. Right now the wrist isn't following the gun. We're going to be doing a hierarchy that looks a little bit like this. So we're going to create a master control. We're going to have a spin control, which is located in the trigger guard as a child of that. And we're also going to constrain the wrist to that master. We're also going to constrain the gun control to the spin control. So I'm going to start by making sure I have a locator where I want to animate from. This is going to be our master control. I'm going to give it a rename. Then I'm going to duplicate it and put it somewhere in the middle of the trigger guard and give that a name. This is going to be our spin control. And I'm just going to drag that under the master control so it's a child. Now I want to constrain the gun to the spin control. But if you want to still be able to animate the gun control itself, you want to make sure that it's inside a group. So you select the spin control and then the group and then constrain it. Now we can animate the spin control rotating and you'll have a nice gun spin. Now if you're doing a similar setup in Blender, you want to make sure that the spin control is set to Euler rotation, not quaternion. And you want to make sure that the first axis of the rotation order is aligned with the direction you want to spin in. So we're wanting to spin in the X axis locally. So we're going to check the gimbal mode, Control Shift right click, or you could also do E left click. And you can see here that the X axis is the one that's always aligned with the gun because it's the first in the rotation order. So if we animate that moving in any direction, it's always going to be aligned with the gun. So now that we've done that, we can constrain the wrist to the gun master. I'm going to select the wrist and then press F in the outliner so I can find it in the hierarchy. And I also want to be able to animate the wrist by itself. So we're going to constrain to the group again. So selecting the gun master control and then the wrist group, constrain. And now we can animate this master control, the wrist and the gun will follow. And then when we want to spin the gun, we can animate the spin control. So that's the quick way to do it. But if you want a little bit more detail and flexibility, there's a slightly more complex way. The hierarchy looks a little bit like this. We still have our master control, the spin control and the gun, the same as the last one. But we're going to have this extra pivot. It's still going to be a child of the spin control, but we're going to have it oriented to the master control. Then we're going to have the wrist following that. Going to start by selecting the spin control. I'll duplicate it. I'll give it a name and we'll drag that under the spin control to make it a child. And then I'm going to group that. Now with the group selected, I'm just going to offset it a little bit. Somewhere in the center of the finger should be pretty good. I'm also going to delete the wrist constraint because we're going to redo it. Now you'll see if we rotate the spin control, the offset group follows, but we want it to still be oriented to the master control. So I'm going to select the master control and then the offset group, making sure you're in the rigging or animation toolset. I'm going to come up to constrain and orient. Now what happens when we rotate our spin control is that the offset rotates around in the trigger guard, but it stays upright. Now we can constrain our wrist to that. So selecting the offset control and then the wrist group, constrain. Now when we rotate the spin control, you get this nice secondary action of the hand translating in a circle, which gives you some nice extra detail when you're animating the spin. You can also use this offset control as a pivot point for your hand. Say if you want it to be something a little bit more out, you can do that and everything will still work normally. And finally, you can animate the master control to control everything. Now you can see with a little bit of setup and planning, you can easily animate anything spinning like a gun or a prop. Happy animating!